Well, thanks for coming out, and you heard some speeches, so why don't we take a couple questions?
Senator Paul, there are a lot of people who see you as a Tea Party Republican. What are you doing coming to a heavily Latino, heavily Democratic area of the city? Why did you come here today?
Well, I think the message of freedom and less government resonates with a lot of people. A lot of, I think, what's fundamentally American is making choices and giving people choices. What's interesting about school choice is that many of the people that we're trying to help, because of their economic circumstances, don't have many choices. For example, wealthy people can go to any school they want. So there are people in Washington, let's see, some prominent politicians whose kids go to Sidwell Friends, that narrows it down a little bit, but who don't seem to think that that choice is also good for people who live in poverty. And so I think the choice should be there for everyone, and that your money, when you paid your school taxes, still should be your money, and you ought to be able to direct it where you want to take it.
What did you mean when you called the people who oppose choice dead-enders?
Well, I think that the status quo is a dead end for a lot of kids. I mean, we have a lot of cities, public schools, where only half the kids are even graduating. I was at Josephinum yesterday in Chicago and St. Anthony's today, and the vast majority are not only graduating, but going to college. So I think we really ought to look at that success and say, to me, it's like you see those kids around the table. How could anybody be against expanding that to more people?
I know you were in Chicago last night, but why come to Milwaukee?
Milwaukee's really the historic home of the voucher movement when I think about it. I'm pretty sure you were first with all of it. You probably have the biggest voucher program really in the United States. The movie Waiting for Superman, I think, also featured one of your superintendents, I believe, and other students from here. So I think there's, want to come. Really, for me, it is also about learning. I want to listen to the kids, listen to the parents. But I come away really motivated, but also wondering about what's happening to the other kids who don't get this choice.
Senator, you voted against the immigration bill last year. Does that send a conflicting message to you being pro-Latino?
I'm for immigration reform. The bill, one of the reasons I opposed the bill was that it actually doesn't allow enough people to come to our country to work. Right now, if you want to come to our country to pick crops, there's an unlimited amount of work visas. Under the Senate bill, there would have only been 100,000. The estimate is that about 400,000 people come to our country to pick crops each year. If you limit it to 100,000, you're guaranteeing that people will have to come here illegally. Same for construction. They limited the amount of workers to 15,000 for construction. There's many more people here who are undocumented working, so it doesn't work. The other thing is that one of the fundamental problems in our immigration system currently, of the 11 million who are here, 40% had a visa and then became illegal. The primary reason they become illegal is that they were picking crops for $9 an hour and they saw a sign for $14 an hour doing construction work. They changed jobs. The Senate bill didn't allow you to change jobs. Still, it kept the same problems. So I can't vote for a bill that doesn't fix the problem, that would still have a great deal of incentive for illegal immigration. We have to fix it once and for all. So I am for it, and I'm still talking with members in the House, Republican and Democrat, to try to find a compromise.
But you didn't like the amnesty. You didn't like the amnesty part either, though.
Well, it sort of depends on what you call amnesty. Amnesty's called different things by different people, and I think sometimes we get trapped in the rhetoric of one word stopping us from getting anywhere. I think that accommodating some of the people who are currently undocumented, I'm for, which means allowing some of the people to get work visas, or really letting many, if not all, apply for work visas. It needs to be done in an orderly fashion, but I am also with the conservatives in the House in the sense that I say you have to fix the border problem once and for all. You have to secure the border. So I introduced an amendment that's called Trust But Verify, and in that amendment, Congress would vote each year and gradually keep enforcing the border. But the process of normalizing people, getting them work visas, would be dependent on the border becoming more secure, and we wouldn't give up that power to the executive. We'd keep it with Congress. Maybe one or two more.
Senator, you said
there has to be a meeting in the middle. There is one fundamental thing that sort of divides people, and that's whose money it is. When you pay taxes, is it your money or does it somehow become someone else's money? Does the money have to be somehow neutral between public and private, between religious and non-religious, once the government's in possession of your money? In many things, we haven't said that. We allow Pell Grants to go to private school. We allow GI Bill to go to private schools. You can go to Notre Dame or a state school with a GI Bill. So I think that's the fundamental thing we have to get beyond. But I think for the people in the teaching community, many of whom are in my family, we have to make sure they understand it isn't that we're trying to destroy them as teachers. In fact, My point is that I think choice and innovation and less rigid control in Washington allows for more empowerment of teachers. I want teachers to have more power to choose how they teach, principals to have more power, local school boards, superintendents. It also has to do with the way the money is spent. For example, superintendents are limited by directives from Washington on where they can spend the money. So this is the perplexing thing. You'll have a school district with a $100 million budget, and your kid will come home from school saying, "Oh, Dad, we're doing a fundraiser for pencils. We don't have enough money for pencils." And it's like, really? Your budget's $100 million, there's no money for pencils? It's because the directives come from Washington, and they're forced to spend money in one way or another. So maybe one more.
What is your view?
You've already had one more in here.
Senator, in that same
All right, one
vein,
more.
you mentioned during your speech that you think there is room for religion in the classroom. What does that look like? What do you mean by that?
I don't mean in necessarily the traditional public schools. I think there's room for religion in education, and that means when you get your money, which is a voucher, you choose where to go, and then when you go to school, you may choose a religious school or you may choose a secular school. The First Amendment really wasn't about keeping religion out of the public sphere. It was about keeping government out of religion for the most part. When you read the First Amendment, it says Congress shall pass no law establishing a religion or inhibiting a religion. It really wasn't so much about that we would never have a prayer in a school or education. Think about the problems we face in our country and just ask yourself whether or not we need more teaching of right and wrong, more of a sense of morality in our country. It doesn't have to come from government necessarily, but it isn't a bad thing. I think it's a good thing to have a virtuous underpinning to a society. But it wouldn't be in public schools necessarily. It would be people who choose to take their money that they paid in school taxes. They may choose to go to a private school, but it wouldn't be forced on anybody. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.